Today I'm just bringing to you the exchange of PHI risk plan and mitigation strategy for Infm645 Healthcare Informatics Risk Assessment and Ethics. We were given a task to review a scenario pertaining to the psychiatric transfer of a psychiatric patient from a hospital to a skilled nursing facility. We are to detail some of the risks associated with this plan and to prepare a risk management program plan that would mitigate those potential risk factors. My risk analysis involved identifying the risk factors, setting the level, the probability of occurrence of those risks, the priority, the consequence, ethics, privacy, and confidentiality issues surrounding it. As far as data sharing is concerned, that is, in this particular scenario, because of the fact that the hospital does not have the same EMR or EHR system as the skilled nursing facility, the electronic transfer of data is low. So therefore, I prioritize it as a low priority and not likely to have that much of a risk factor for us because we're not technically sending information electronically from the hospital to us. As far as role, access, and management policy, I rated it as a level 5 with a 90% probability of occurrence of risk and a high priority and near certain occurrence because there are non-affiliated positions with the hospital that do not actually have a contract with the skilled nursing facility. That's an assumption that I had made. So therefore, it would be very risky for us as far as doing role accesses, and that would be a top priority that we need to focus on to make sure that there is a plan in place to give temporary or permanent access to non-affiliated physicians or clinicians that come in and out of our skilled nursing facilities to see our patients. The next issue risk factor is access to mental health records. It is projected that the skilled nursing, this is an assumption that I made, that the skilled nursing will see more, get more referrals for mental health patients from this one hospital facility. So therefore, I rated it as a 3 because the percentage still is to be determined as far as how many we should be getting, but we just projected maybe like 20% or so growth. So I did a 50% probability with medium priority and likely of occurrence. The next thing is securing non-electronic patient data. That basically is surrounding the fact that we don't have electronic patient information that we can send back and forth, and also the physician that is seeing our patient, he works with outside vendors that he may or may not be sending information electronically. If he is, then we need to make sure that there's a whole agreement set up for that, as well as with the non-electronic patient data. We need to make sure that there is an agreement, a business associate agreement set up in place to make sure that the information is sent on paper, like via fax or hand delivered, is secure, and that we are protected in the event that the information is lost or stolen. The vendor security and privacy infrastructure risk factor, that's huge because there are many different factors involved in this scenario. You have a doctor that is not affiliated, you have a transcription service that's not affiliated with the skilled nursing facility, and you have a hospital that does not affiliate with the hospital. Only affiliation that we have is that we accept referrals from them, but they're not connected to our EHR system. So as far as security and privacy is going to be huge because a lot of times that means that the transfer of patient data is going to be on paper. So therefore, we need to have a good security process in place potential risk. Loss prevention is just basically what you want to do. Be proactive, have education classes, training people, educating them on things to look for that can be considered a potential risk. Loss reduction, that's where you want to look at just seeing, you know that you're going to have these things occur, so you want to make sure that the number of occurrences is less. So you want to put plans and procedures in place to reduce the likelihood of those risks happening. When it comes to risk financing, there are two options. You either transfer it or you retain it. When you're transferring it, that means that you either have a insurer or you have a non-insurer, and you're just transferring those. Like, for example, with the vendor, if the vendor, this transcription has a breach of some sort of the private information, then because we would have a contract with them that states that if you have a breach of contract, then you are responsible for X, Y, and Z of this liability, and we are responsible for A, B, and C. That would be a transfer. Retention is basically where internally the facility, skilled nursing facility, would have their own policy or own funding to take care of any risk involved in a particular scenario, particular risk factor. When it comes to risk monitoring, this is another step of the risk management plan that you have to make sure that you have in order to make sure that the plan is even working. The risk monitoring is a systematic way of tracking and evaluating the performance of risk mitigation across actions against established metrics. The key stakeholders listed is not an exhaustive list, but will serve as a starting point and will be adjusted accordingly. You always want your risk monitoring plan to be expandable, flexible, because things change, business growth, so you want to make sure that your plan will be accommodated for that. The results of each evaluation will go back into the core plan, meaning into the core risk management plan, to make any adjustments or enhancements to that plan. Some of the stakeholders that I had identified from this scenario was the hospital, the psychiatric unit, potential data loss, data exchange with non-affiliated, non-compatible EHR, securing unstructured paper patient data. Some of the risk techniques was loss prevention, risk financing option was the risk retention and risk transfer. So we could use a combination of those depending upon the scenario. Monitoring and reporting. I would think that with this particular type of instance, you want to have a monthly way of reviewing this information via the risk management online tracking system, where individuals can go into it and actually track any incidents that occur. And reporting it would be on a quarterly basis to the review board in each quarterly meeting. The skilled nursing facility, potential losses there that would need to be monitored would be security of mental patient records, patient care, and medical staff. Again, the risk technique to use with this would be loss prevention, risk retention, and risk transfer. Again, I also indicated that there will be a monthly risk management online check of reports running and verification to check for any incidents and to track those out and investigate, as well as doing the quarterly review board meeting. The physician, the one that is non-affiliated with the skilled nursing facility, his access, control, and permission, and patient care will all be very sensitive, and this is a loss prevention I'm sure that that would be for at least a year at the least, and then be reviewed in the annual meeting. And storage of mental health records, that's PHI compromise, damage to reputation, that's segregation of loss and exposure, and yearly technical review. Some of the HIPAA privacy rules and security rules as related to PHI exchange are addressed in the paper. I just highlighted a couple, a few of them that were of significance important to this particular scenario. The privacy rule and security rules, specific rules that affect the execution of the risk management plan for this skilled nursing facility, and its unique relationship with non-affiliated physicians, protection of patients with mental disabilities being treated at this facility, and providing system access to the EHR system to a non-affiliated physician. I thought it was important to bring out the fact that mental health records are treated a little special than your every other patient that you have in your facility. They have a special privacy rule, especially pertaining to the progress notes. Those notes have a special protection against them, and they're covered within this rule here at the top. As far as security rules, where we're talking about giving people access to systems, it's important to have a unique user identification and encryption and decryption. Those are two things that we are going to make sure that in this risk management plan are existent and that do work for our particular scenarios. State or local laws pertain to PHI exchange and access to records. These two laws, are Georgia state laws pertaining to electronic records, patient access to own records, and confidentiality. This first one pertains to a lot about mental health records and the electronic exchange of them and how to protect them and what's considered a qualifying record under this. And the next one talks about the same type of thing, but it also includes some rights as far as the cost of copying and mailing of the patient and the patient rights as to their records. And lastly, this is the reference slide. From slides 2 to 4, these are the reference